Hello YouTube, this is going to be my heavy-duty multi-tool comparison. I'm not going to list all the features on everything. You can see that on the websites of the manufacturers, but I'm just going to hit the highs and the low points of each one and why you might want to pick one over the other. So SOG Powerlock, Leatherman Surge, Leatherman Wave, it's kind of a crossover. Swisstool original, and Gerber MP600 blunt. So let's start with the Surge. The first thing you notice about it is the weight. It's a very heavy multi-tool. Even if you carry it on a pouch in your belt, you're going to know it's there all day. It's not necessarily annoying, especially if you're wearing it on your belt, but don't even think about carrying it in your pocket, like a pants pocket. Maybe a big coat pocket or in a bag or something like that. This is the one that I leave in my glove box in my car now. Kind of switch between that and the Swisstool. So you notice that it's kind of on the heavy side. Some people associate that with quality. One downside too is that these sharp edges, when it's closed, when the pliers are closed, kind of this, the back corners of the blades they did bevel them, but they still were a little sharp. And then the outside of the handles here too, could have used a little more work. So I touched them up with a Dremel grinding wheel. Also, it's pretty spendy. It's at the time of this review, it's $110. So that's not just a purchase you go out and make without even thinking about it, or at least not one that I make so easily. Onto some of the good things now. The screwdriver, the big flathead screwdriver, that is a very heavy-duty screwdriver there. The only one that can top it is the Swisstool. The Swisstool one is even thicker and wider. It's so wide that you might not even call it a screwdriver anymore, but a pry bar. But this is really good. I've used this a lot. It fits a large flathead screw, at least in the US, really well, and you can do some prying with it without worrying about breaking it. Also, it's got a reamer. I won't just call it an awl, because an awl is just a round pointy thing for either scratching a mark on something or something like that, maybe piloting a drill hole. But this can do so much more. It's got that sharp edge, and it's got a sewing eye. That would be some pretty coarse sewing, but you could do it. And a lot of the multi-tools are kind of skipping that now. They always are careful to include a can opener, it seems like, but the awl they kind of forget sometimes. Going back to the outside here, zoom back. The blade exchanger. So on the Wave, you just have a file here. You have a full-length file, double cut on one side and diamond on the other. And that's the file that they included with the Surge, double cut and diamond coated. But the Surge goes one step further in versatility. You can swivel this away, and then you see that it's got a T-shank jigsaw pattern to it. So you can replace that with any T-shank jigsaw blade. And that, if you don't mind carrying the blades with you, that adds a lot of versatility, because you can get really long jigsaw blades. You can get a 6-inch long wood cutting jigsaw blade, and then there's no apologies for wood cutting ability in a short tool, It also comes with a wood cutting blade, just a basic wood cutting jigsaw blade. It's a little thicker here at the shank, but I think the later versions of the Surge made that a standard thickness too. This first one was thicker here, so that if you put a T-shank jigsaw blade in, it would be a little bit of a loose fit as far as wobbling back and forth in that direction. So big thumbs up to Leatherman Surge for that. They're the only ones that have that right now. Another thing I really like about the Surge that kind of sets it apart is the outside accessible scissors. It's a nice long lever on the scissors. a great action, a strong head, and I also like that the spring here, it's a lever spring rather than a leaf spring, so that's pretty durable to begin with, but when you unlock the scissors, that spring is on a separate layer, so that when you fold up the scissors, it just pushes back and it's not under tension. So you're not gonna, wear out the spring so easily on that. And I don't know about you guys, but on any multi-tool, for my use, the things that I use most are the plain edge blade and the scissors. And this has both of them right on the outside, so big thumbs up for that. The sheath, I don't know if they still include this one. I think this used to be considered their high-end one, but initially on the outside it looks very nice, nice finish, but after not carrying it for too very long, it has started to kind of come apart here where it bends. I'm kind of disappointed in that. And when I looked at Leatherman's website, they said that the sheaths are not covered by their warranty. That's a big fail. That's a big fail for a $100 multi-tool. It should be a great sheath, and it should be, I don't know, maybe not covered by the warranty, but it should be something that's going to last you 5 years of everyday use right out of the box. But they do have the storage here for the bit extender for the hex bits. Speaking of which, I'll just show that real quick. This is another thing that makes the Surge so versatile. This is kind of a flattened 1/4 inch hex drive. So Leatherman has their proprietary bits, and the one that they include, oops, I'm off camera there, is a medium flathead and a number 1/2 Phillips. So it's a little loose in a number 2, and it won't fit every number 1, but it's a pretty fair compromise. And they sell a bit extender, which I don't have handy right here, that'll extend that probably 3 or 4 inches, and the end is a 1/4 inch hex, like a standard 1/4 inch hex, so that if you know you're going to need a certain bit, you can carry those with you along with the bit extender. And that bit extender will fit right in one of the side hatches, or the side pouches here. And then in the other one, you could put, if you really stretched it, you could probably get a 1 AA flashlight in there. 1 AAA would be less of a stretch. 1 Quad A flashlight. I don't even know if they make them. That would be a perfect fit there. So, and then in the sheath, there's kind of this area right behind where the tool goes. You can either carry your spare blades, that's what I've been doing, or you could have the bit card for the 1/4 inch hex bits. So another thing, this is another thing that really sets a Surge apart, is the one-handed opening blades. It gives you a plain edge. It's a nice clip point. It's got some belly, and this is kind of nice too. It's got kind of a shallow grind angle. It comes very sharp, but what I like about that is that you can then, it looks like about a 20 degree or 25 degree. You could then put a secondary bevel on that. I like 40 degrees. And then it's very easy to resharpen because you have all this thin area here. And also with the one-handed blades, you get the serrated one. I hardly ever use that, but I figure that'll help keep the plain edge blade sharp longer, because when I cut string and some of the tougher things like plastic packaging, this thing will just rip right through it. And then the plain edge blade I can save for finer work, especially with that nice pointy tip. And the thing about the one-handed blades is that this now becomes a viable replacement for the one-handed opening folding knife that a lot of guys carry. You don't even, if you're going to carry a multi-tool and you carry this one, you don't need that separate one anymore. You just pop this out of your sheath, pop it open, got a nice frame lock here, so one-handed opening and closing, it's great. I think some guys are still going to carry their tactical folder because of the exotic steel and better balance, but it's a viable option. They did make it so that you could take it apart, but then they use security Torx. So you got to go out and buy security Torx bits if you don't have them. That's kind of dumb. They should have just made it either Torx or metric Allen. And that's about it with the Surge. Really good overall package. just needs to be touched up here on the back. Keep in mind that it's heavy. You probably are not going to want to pants pocket carry it. And just as a quick comparison, here's a wave. So this is kind of a perfect fit in a hand. This one really fills up the hand, and in my hand it kind of sticks out the top and bottom a little bit. But here they are side by side. Surge on the bottom. Okay, that's enough with the Surge. Move on to the Gerber MP600 next. Start with the bright sides. The price was 45 or 50 bucks or something, and it's made in the US. You see that? US made. So for you know, the US viewers here, that's a big pro. It's nice to have a viable US choice, and especially refreshing for it to be US made and to be so affordable. The pliers are, if you need something with easy, fast, one-handed opening pliers, the Gerber is pretty much your only choice. Leatherman makes one that kind of copies this design. I forget what it's called right at this moment, and you'll see later the SOG is also one-handed opening, but it takes a little bit of practice, and this is so easy. You just squeeze these, and a lot of guys, they like to grab a handle and flick it out, but that's kind of, you know, you got to really flick it hard, and you got to have just the right technique. I don't like that. All you got to do is squeeze the buttons and let it slip out like that. And to close it, same thing. Squeeze the buttons, and then this is much easier to do when you're standing up. And then just, you know, kind of flip it down a little bit, and then it goes back in. So that's really easy. The pliers, the handle angle is great on this too. You can see how it's straight together when it's closed, and when it's all the way open, it's not like splayed at some unrealistic angle. This is an angle that you could actually use. Just for comparison, I'll get the Surge back out, and you see that? The ones that butterfly open, like most of the Leathermans, when you get that open all the way, man, that's a big reach there. And then, you know, if you're on a bolt or something here, and your hand wants to kind of slip down, you lose torque when you slip down. So this is actually, on the Gerber, this is a more friendly viewing angle, or squeezing angle to me. The pliers also has the biggest gripper area in this class of tool. So you really can grab some pretty big nuts or bolts in there, and they're sharp. They did a really good job on that gripper area. One downside, you can see the ruler here. Since it doesn't open up 180 degrees, they're kind of limited to what they can do here. So they just marked it 0 to 3 inches on one side, and 0 to 8 centimeters on the other side. So you still have a ruler there if that's important to you, but it's a much shorter one. The inside tools too, another thing I like about this one is that when you have an inside tool open, you have a nice comfortable grip here. You have the lock release, also serves as a good thumb rest. And I would say none of the others are so comfortable to use the inside tools once you get it out. If you just want to cut a quick rope, then you just do it like that, leave the pliers out. If you're going to be doing some more extended cutting and you want ultimate comfort, then retract the pliers. One downside too, when you get it, I mean, it's obvious it's made out of stamped metal just by the way it's made, but it was a little bit sharp here on these back outside edges, and on the front outside edges, and also, and this calls for a zoom in, you can see the pliers head. I hit that with a Dremel sanding drum, broke the corners here, broke the edges here, and just kind of smooth that out a lot. Otherwise it's going to tear up the sheath pretty quickly, I think. And you can probably also see where I did that here. So I went all around here, cleaned that up with a Dremel, and also around the back here. That would have been nice if Gerber did that for us, but you know, at the price of this tool. And it's not like it's going to cut you or anything. It's just not as comfortable as it could have been. Also, one other negative, I've seen this in Amazon reviews before, but some guys complain about it rusting, and they're so proud they put, well, maybe they don't anymore. Used to say they put stainless right on here, but this one hasn't even been used or carried all that hard, but you can see, zoomed in a little too fast, you can see a little spot of rust there. Right there at the back of the serrated blade. And it's not rust that's gonna like build up and the whole thing is gonna be caked with rust and make it useless, but it's you know, it's just a little disappointing when you're expecting full-on stainless steel. Sheath is good. It's not, you know, really worthy of a lot of praise, but it's a good basic sheath, solidly made. It's got 2 loops here. I'm not sure what that's for. Is that, I don't know, does that make it MOLLE compatible? I don't know. I'm not a military guy anymore, so I don't know. But my one complaint about it is that when you put the tool in there, push it all the way down, and you close it, that Velcro is still exposed there, see? So you've got all this Velcro up here. Get on camera there. You're only using about this much of the Velcro. You're just using the tip because it's just, this flap is not long enough. When you fold it over, try and get a side angle here. You can see they're just not using all the Velcro because this flap should have been at least 3/4 of an inch longer. So, not a deal killer. I would prefer that to the Surge, where the hinge part of the flap is going to wear out. That's pretty bogus. Another thing people comment about with the Gerber is that the pliers are rattly, and it's true. Even when you know, squeeze the handles together, they rattle around a little bit. It has nothing to do with the function of it. You know, they still work great. You're probably not even going to notice it when you're using it, but it just bothers some people. People associate loose tolerance with low quality. That's going to bother some people. So if you're that kind of person where that's always going to bother you, just, you know, skip this and get something else. That's just the nature of this sliding design there. In order for it to slide out easily, it has to be a little bit of a loose fit. Another thing I like about the Gerber is the Wharncliffe plain edge blade. This is nice because you've got a nice sharp point here. You can do some precision work with that. A nice straight edge here. Straight knife edges are easier to sharpen. And then if you look at the back, because of this pointy tip, you might expect that the knife blade's going to be fragile, but if you look, that's full thickness along the whole length until you get to that last 1/4 of an inch or something. Let me zoom in for that a little bit. See that? That's full blade thickness there all the way until you get out to the tip here. So even though it has that fine tip that you can work with, it doesn't mean it's going to be fragile. The screwdrivers are a little short. That's this one, the medium one, is the longest one. But for like the large one, it's not particularly large. That's equivalent to like the medium on the Leatherman. It's kind of short. And then the fine one is long enough to be pretty useful. The file is a double cut on one side and a single cut on the other side. So this side will be good for steel. This will be good for everything else. And it's a good file. It's not really good like the Victorinox or the Leatherman, but it's I would call it a solid good. And one more criticism: no pliers, or I mean no scissors. I know that's not something that you consider a heavy-duty thing, but like on the Surge, they give you a scissors. It's outside accessible, and it's a heavy-duty scissors too. I would have rather seen them drop the serrated blade and put put a scissors there. And I'm told that's something that can be done. I might look into modding that, because this nut is captive, and then this one you can grab with the needle nose pliers and unscrew it, and then if you have a donor multi-tool, take the scissors from that, put it in here. So I'm going to look into that. But overall, excellent multi-tool, especially for 45, 50 bucks. I don't think there's anything that can touch it for the price. I don't think you can get a used Leatherman Surge for that. It would have to be pretty beat up. Alright, so that takes care of the Gerber. Next up we have the Swisstool. And this is an original one. I got this one when it first came out. It's got a nylon pouch but with the snap closure. I think that's probably my favorite combination. I like the nylon and I like this snap. It doesn't feel like it's going to ever wear out. You can see it's this one has seen a lot of action over the years. I carried this under the seat of a motorcycle and in the trunk of another motorcycle, so it was kind of buzzing and rattling around just for lots and lots of hours. So that's why the tip of this is a little beat up. But when you first take this out, the first thing you notice again is the weight. Feels about the same as the Surge. And then the second thing you notice is the high gloss finish. You can see that. I'll reflect it right back in the lens there, and you can see. And then of course you notice before you bought it that the price is high. One neat thing about this is they actually made the plier or the ruler to be used. It's printed right on this, and there's almost no gap in between there. And on some of the other designs, bring the Surge back here. Oh my god, that's a tight hinge on that one side. They put it on the inside so the pliers is in the way first of all, and then they've got a gap there. So if you need to like measure something between 10 and 12 centimeters, good luck. You're gonna have to guesstimate it. But this one is right, somewhere where you can put it right up against something and use it. Let me zoom in on that detail because they did a really good job on the way it's stamped in there too. So you got metric on one side and imperial on the other side. Another thing, the Swisstool was the first one. I think Victorinox may still be the only one. All the tools except for the pliers are accessible on the outside. Actually, I take that back. I know Gerber copied them on several models now. So that's nice. They all come out individually. They don't clump. They all lock individually by the way the back springs are cut here. And like I said before, my most commonly used tools are the knife blade and the scissors, which are both outside accessible, so you don't even have to open this one a lot of times for it to be useful. The screwdrivers are all nice and long too. That's a good 2-inch long shank on that Phillips, for example. And this fine screwdriver, a bit of a zoom in here. Fine screwdriver tip is also a couple inches long. You can really get that into some areas where you need to get it. The one on the bottle opener is also, it's got kind of a long shank, at least 2 inches again. That's the medium flathead. The only one that's not long is this big boy here. Oh my gosh, is that ever a big screwdriver. I'll put a pen next to it for size reference. Here's a big pen. Man, that's a big screwdriver. And I'll take the one in case you have, one or the other Surge or Swisstool. You can get a size. This is the Surge on the bottom and the Swisstool on the top. So you can see the Swisstool one is wider, not so thick, but toward the base it's just as thick or maybe even a little thicker than that of the Surge. So that is a heavy duty screwdriver, either for really big flathead screws or just to use as a pry bar. That's impressive, and I'm glad they included that. sometimes you just need to know you can pry with something without breaking it or bending it, and that's just the tool for it. The pliers head shape on this is kind of a compromise, so that can be a deal killer, because if you want blunt, you don't have blunt, and if you want needle nose, you don't have that either. You've got something in between. So you can see it comes to a kind of a point, but it's not a true needle nose point. And then you have your gripper there. This is the original one. It doesn't have a very big cutter area there, but I think this is a great compromise. You know, sometimes you need to get in somewhere where your fingers can't get in, and then you need some kind of needle nose, which this has, and but you also need it to be strong so that you're not worried about breaking it or bending it or something like that. So this is, consider it like a heavy-duty needle nose, or heavy-duty fine nose maybe is a good term to use. So I like that. Some people won't like that. And it's also worth researching a little bit, because there have been several different plier heads on the Swisstool. The scissors on this are right, they seem to be right from the 91mm Victorinox Swiss Army knives, but they're great. You know, they're probably at least an inch long at the blades. They have that nice action. The leaf spring that they use here, or the hairspring, I don't know what it's called officially, but that's not as heavy duty as you would see on some other things, but it does last a good long time, and when it does break, you can just pop it out and then put a new one in. They're not expensive or hard to find. Great scissors. Let me get the pliers out again. Oops, forgot that's outside. The pliers head too is a nice, it's loose enough that you can grab the top handle and let go of the bottom handle and let gravity help you open it. But it's also not loose enough that the wire cutters doesn't work. So they did perfect execution there. Another thing that the Victorinox has that seems like nobody else has it is this chisel tool. And they've got it in the Spirit too, and I love it on both of them. You've got this curved cutter area for stripping wire, so you can kind of hold the wire against there, turn it with your other hand, it cuts through the jacket, and then put it in the V part to grip, and then pull off the insulation. So that's a really good stripper there. And then here you got a chisel, so that's a sharp chisel. If you want to, cut like a woodworking chisel, you can kind of push cut into a tighter area that you couldn't do that with the knife blade really. So I like the inclusion of that, and they don't really have any competition on that yet, except from themselves. And then I kind of already mentioned the sheath. This particular one I think is a little bit lighter duty than they're including now. It's a little thin, but it's got a snap closure, nylon, and you can wear it either vertically or horizontally. If you wear it horizontally, it might have to be a little bit thinner belt. So there we have the Swisstool. And the last featured one here is the SOG Powerlock. They have an S60 and an S61. And with this one, the first impression, it's kind of heavy too, but it's got that high gloss finish like Victorinox has. So if you're kind of working with wet hands a lot, you might want to consider that, either wearing gloves or getting the Leatherman with the brushed finish instead. And the price is fair too. I forgot to mention the Victorinox Swisstool is over $100 now. This is closer to $50, and it's just as nice in most ways, nicer in some ways, but really is a good value. And the first thing, of course, they call it the Powerlock, or they used to call them power pliers, but you can kind of see here in the top of the handles, they've integrated some gears. And the plier head is not directly attached at both points to the top of the handles. So you've got some compound leverage there. Whatever force you apply squeezing at the grips is going to be doubled by the time it gets to the plier head. And a lot of guys say once you've used that, man, it's hard to go back. I don't know how many times I've used the gripper area of a slip joint pliers, you know, when I didn't have a wrench around, and you're trying to grab that as hard as you can while also turning, and then if you slip, you round off the corners of the nut, and then you're just kicking yourself. With this thing, since every pound you squeeze with is 2 pounds here, that's a lot less chance that you're going to do that. And they were generous with the wire cutter too. That's a nice big wire cutter there at the bottom. Although it doesn't seem to have much of a dent for hard wire. And the tool cover, this is kind of a polarizing feature here. You can see this is the only one that has that, and that kind of, you have to pop that open to get to the tools inside. And they do that, I think, because they're thinking that the pliers is going to be the main tool, and when you have those covers on, you're not squeezing against the edge of the handles or the back of the internal tools. You just have a nice smooth area to squeeze on. It just has little cutouts for the pliers head to fold into. But some guys don't like that. I guess I could take it or leave it. It's kind of, it makes it longer to get to the inside tools, so I tend to just take them off. And I just consider it a good option, because if you're a guy who's using the pliers 90% of the time, leave them on. Then you have a nice comfortable pliers grip. But if you use everything a lot, then you know, they just pop right off. And then also, it's worth noting that it closes tighter also when those are off, so I'm just going to leave those off for now. Okay, the pliers too, this is worth noting. It has a very fine tip on the pliers. If I put my thumb up to the end of that, you can see that is a very fine tip. And let me get the Surge pliers out here. Some people consider those fine, but oops, let me get them both on screen. This one's the Surge, this one's the SOG. Get it pointed the right way. Very fine tip on the SOG. Now I wonder a little bit, because if this is a heavy duty, if this is a heavy duty multi-tool, what's it doing with such a fine tip? And especially with the compound leverage, I could see you grabbing something really hard right at the tip and bending those. So you might have to be careful. Just, you know, use common sense when you're applying your muscles there. I also like about the SOG that they're user tunable. You got just regular Allen screws here. And then, for example, if I would rather have the scissors instead of the V-cutter, no problem. Just take this out, take the V-cutter out, put the scissors in there. No big deal. It doesn't void your warranty or anything, so that's great. And for example, a lot of people, aficionados at least, don't like a combo blade. Or if they do, they don't like a chisel grind on it where it's only ground on one side, so that when you cut into something it tends to veer off. So I plan to replace that with a plain edge blade, for example. So it's not a huge deal that it came with the combo blade that I'm not a huge fan of. I don't have to regrind it or anything, just take it off, put it aside, put in the plain edge one. So just a regular Allen screws, and you can, you know, or another thing is, you know, when the V-cutter gets dull and I decide I really like it, take it out, throw it away, get a new one, put it in. No big deal. So nice. Some of the other ones, like I mentioned on the Leatherman, you can work on them, but then they always have some semi-proprietary screw there. So that's nice. I also like that it's got a crimper here, and that's a proper crimper. You know, that's not one that's kind of looking at the Surge crimper here. That's kind of an afterthought, don't you think? Right in between here, just like that tiny little area. That's kind of an afterthought crimper. But look at this one. That's like a separate piece that they extended from the, you know, from the hinge piece there. Now that blasting cap crimper, the big one, I have no use for that. And probably 90% of the people who buy these are going to have no use for that. They should have left off this crimper and just had the blasting cap crimper and have that be the military version. Or maybe just leave it like this, have that be the military version, and then the other version would just have maybe 2 different sizes of crimper there, regular electrical wire crimper. One downside is that this power lock, it has major tool clumping. And I think that probably has to do with being user serviceable. If you have a bunch of washers in between there to keep them from clumping, then it's more stuff to lose when you're taking it apart. So like when I pull out the blade, the whole stack comes out. And then when I fan this bottle opener away from the blade, I got to be careful not to catch that edge there so I don't cut myself. So the tool clumping takes it a little longer to get what you want to get. If you're concerned about the speed of getting to the secondary tools, then just get the Swisstool and be done with it, because they're all outside accessible, they don't clump. But with the SOG, they clump, and that's just kind of the price you pay for having them be exchangeable. Another nice thing about the SOG is and they have this on the pocket power plier also. The socket driver, it's got a 1/4-inch socket driver. So that really opens up a ton of options for you, right? If you can have 1/4-inch socket, this would be like, for example, this would be a good tool to have with you maybe on the seat bag of your bicycle, because not only do you have these really powerful pliers with compound leverage for grabbing nuts and bolts and brake and shift cables, but you've also got something that you can have, carry 4 or 5 sockets to fit all the bolts on your bike. All you would need is maybe a couple of Allen sockets or something like that to get your Allen screws, and then you're all set. So nice. Another downside, and this is even more so than the Victorinox, they've kind of rounded off the corners of the flathead screwdrivers. I don't know if they did that during polishing or if that was intentional, but that's kind of lame. This is one area where no one can touch Leatherman, is the way the screwdrivers are executed on the Leatherman. They were designed and made by someone who has used screwdrivers a lot, So I'll show you for comparison. I'll get one out on the Surge. Let me get that big one out from the Surge again. Get it close up here. Might be too close to focus. Zoom back just a bit. There we go. You can see that's ground here and not even polished, and the corners are just nice and sharp. Really well done, Leatherman. And by comparison, we get to the SOG, and it's all kind of, rounded off. They did grind it and not polish it on that face, which is nice, but then they polished the heck out of the sides to the point where it's rounded off. And also, it's worth noting that that's the biggest screwdriver. Oh no, there's another one. This one's a little bigger. It's not as big as the one on the Swisstool or on the Surge, but that's a decent screwdriver there. It's like your standard large size flathead screw in the US. And I do have to criticize the file too. It is the lousiest cutting teeth on a file of any multi-tool, I think. The single cut side, it's just kind of shallow. They're just cut kind of shallow. You could probably still file okay with that. You don't feel like you're getting anywhere though. So that's kind of a lousy file, and you see it's the bottom. About the bottom 1/2 inch or 3/4 of an inch is not cut, and about the top 1/2 inch is not cut either. So not only is that not cut deep enough, but then they didn't cut the serrations in the whole length of it. The double cut side is better. It's aggressive enough to be more useful. But again, they didn't do the tip. And then they ground the tip down. You can see how they kind of ground it down a little bit, as if that's a large pry bar or a screwdriver tip or something, But if that file is hard enough to file steel, and then you try to turn a screw here, you're just going to snap it. So pretty poor execution of a file by SOG there. They need to take a lesson from Gerber and Leatherman and just about everybody else, I guess. And then the last thing, I'm going to kind of demo, just take a minute here and demo some one-handed opening, SOG versus Gerber. So they advertise this as one-handed opening. You would butterfly it open instead of sliding it. And it takes a little bit of practice, but once you get just a little bit of practice, it's doable. So here's how you open it, and to close it, you just get better at it the more you do it. And then compared to the Gerber, for example, the Gerber is a lot more no fuss. I'm not standing up, so it's harder to close it one-handed, but yeah, it's hard to do sitting down. But the SOG, totally doable. The Victorinox and the Leatherman, totally not doable. So if you need a one-handed multi-tool, it's got to be either the SOG or the Gerber. Or I guess that other Leatherman that has the one-handed option. If you need outside opening tools, it's got to be the Leatherman. Leatherman or the Victorinox. If it's got to be one-handed, then it's got to be the Leatherman. Let's see what else I have here. Well, that's about it, guys. Thanks for watching, and I welcome your comments. Leave me a thumbs up or a thumbs down. Let me know how helpful that was, and have a good discussion on it too if you want. So thanks for watching. See you next time.